Opening karakia, please.
Kia tau mai te maramatanga, kia tau mai rangamari e, kia tau mai te kaha, me te oroha mō tēnei kaupapa hui e, tai ki e. Translation, let's be grounded in clarity, let's be peaceful, let's be strong and loving at this issue, bind together, and so it is.
Thank you, Drain. Well done. So just welcome to everyone, a warm welcome on this showery day. Thank you all for making the effort to come. Ely, you're on Zoom, acknowledge you, and just any other participants on Zoom. Just if we could ask that you keep your microphones muted, please. Except you, Celia, obviously, when you're speaking, unmute. And just for those in the public gallery and around the table, just a reminder that the toilets are out on the left and the fire exit is out through these doors, the front doors, and assemble in the car park adjacent to the building at the back of the Ambrosia building next door. And just remind you that the media may or are present and may be, not sure about filming, but may be recording this meeting. And just before we move to anything else, I just do intend today that we will have, when we do debate, we'll have items that we will have questions and then debate. So there will be two separate components to the discussions. Any apologies for absence? I think we're all here, aren't we? Full attendance. So no apologies, thank you. We have no one registered to speak for the public forum. So that brings us to the first minutes of the joint Nelson Tasman Regional Transport Committee meeting held on 10th of February 2023 be confirmed. Would someone move Councillor O'Neill, seconded Councillor Dowler. All those in favour will say aye. Against, the resolution is carried. I have Drains just put out and missed declarations of interest. Is there any declarations of interest? Appears not, thank you. And so with that, we'll now move to a presentation from Gillian Ratt, Chair of the Nelson Tasman Cycle Trust.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to the committee. I'm Gillian Ratt, I chair the Nelson Tasman Cycle Trails Trust. Bill Gilbertson, another trustee, and Bill has been very instrumental right since the trust was set up, particularly around the developments and construction and maintenance on the Great Chase Trail. We also have Belinda Crisp, who's our trail manager, in the back here, and I think on Zoom we have Axel Wilkie from, no, not yet. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, he is there. From the Golden Bay group. So this is a joint presentation outline that we put together. So here's the just go back one of the name. So our focus is on, in the context of this presentation, is on connecting communities across the region and enhancing and developing the regional cycle network with community, social and economic benefit. And we would like to see that reflected in the regional land transport plan. So this shows the backbone of the regional cycle network. And what we're proposing, the projects that are in the paper that we've provided to you, is to improve the network by closing the gaps and bring existing sections up to standard. So we've got quite a lot of trail and some on-road sections, which are already great for cycling on, but there is still work that's needed to be done to connect those up, and those are the dotted sections on the map. Our concept is that we would have alongside State Highway 6 from Picton through to Murchison, we'd have Cycle Highway 6, and then alongside State Highway 60 from Richmond to Collingwood, we would have a cycle highway 60, which would also connect with the water taxis in Able Tasman, so provide a link from Kaiteri to Tauchanui and then through to Collingwood and a connection into the Heaphy track. So just to give a little bit of national context, this is a map from Waka Kotahi website, and that shows the bike touring, backpacking routes around the country. So it is quite significant now. The green lines are the Great Rides. The brown ones are what are called heartland rides, and those are predominantly back roads, quiet roads that are cycle friendly, I guess is a good way of describing them. And then they've also put in those blue and pinky bits, what they have termed cycle touring, bikepacking and connector routes. The Heartland rides from Nelson through the Great Taste Trail to Tapawera, and then from Tapawera to Murchison via Tadmore Saddle, through onto State Highway 6, then to turn off to Lake Rotorua and through to Murchison is also classed as one of the Heartland rides, as is the Rainbow Molesworth Link loop. Bikepacking has had considerable growth in the last 5 to 10 years. One of the key events is that there is an event now which some of you will be familiar with called the Tour Aotearoa. That was, I think, first run in 2016. It's not a race, it's an event, but at its maximum in 2020, just before COVID lockdowns, there were 1,000 people who rode that. That's in January, February, March. And that comes through from Picton, through the Mongatapu, through into Nelson, and then across to Murchison, across to the west coast. There's a newer event called the Sounds to Sounds, which starts in Picton and goes through to Milford. But this is a book this is out of a book that was published in 2016, I think, by the Kennett brothers. And you can see that there's 22 what they've called bikepacking routes there. 4 of those 22 are in fact in Te Tau Ihu. And in this Nelson Tasman region, there's the Great Taste Trail included in there, and Kahurangi 500, which is a loop that goes from Nelson, Great Taste Trail through Murchison, over the Old Ghost Road, and up to Karamea, through the Heaphy, through Golden Bay, and back to Nelson again. There's also recently been a Bikepacker's Guide to the World published by Lonely Planet, and that described the Kahurangi 500 as a must-ride destination for all mountain bikers around the globe. So the bikepacking in New Zealand is becoming quite a thing internationally. We have people from overseas come to the Tour Aotearoa, and Nelson Tasman is a key part of that whole picture. A couple of years ago, MB contracted a business called Angus and Associates to do an independent assessment of the economic benefit of the Great Rides. And their analysis for the year ended June 2021 was that spend on the Great Rides across the country was almost $1 billion in that year. So that's a significant economic injection into the regions that these rides go through. There was also an acknowledgement that there's a lot of social and community benefit from the rides as well. And the Great Taste Trail, in fact, has the highest local use of any of the great rides in the country. Cycling was a good news story over COVID. You can see that in 2021, I mean, that was in the middle of a pandemic, and there was still a lot of activity. And in fact, in the fine print at the top, it says there was an increase of 31% on the previous year. So to come into the local context, similar picture here. You can see the peak there. This is the counter numbers that we have on the Great Taste Trail. You can see the peak there in 2020. Prior to COVID lockdowns, there was some drop off in 21 and 22, but still higher use than there had been in 2019. And we're also seeing that in the cycle operators. We've got, I think it's 5 significant operators in Nelson that do cycle rental and will organise tours, guide tours, particularly on the Great Taste, some also activity on the Copper Mine. And those businesses all managed to keep their heads reasonably well above water. Some shifting from international to national market, but they are still all very viable. In fact, there's two new owners came in over the last 2 to 3 years. So it's a very viable business for the businesses in the region. So then to take us on to the specifics of the paper that we've presented to you, and I just wanted to give you a bit of a context there of the picture around cycle trails and bike packing touring as opposed to mountain biking. So that bike packing, that touring really is a significant activity across the country. So the paper we've presented to you doesn't just cover connections that would be of interest in terms of the Regional Land Transport Plan. It also includes two great rides, the Great Taste Trail and the copper mine. So the items identified here in orange, highlighted in orange, are the ones that we felt are particularly relevant to the Regional Land Transport Plan. But I mean, in essence, they all are, because they're taking cyclists off the roads. So what we've presented is a plan for the next 5 to 10 years. And if we move on to the map here, this map details, shows the location of all the items. There's a next map, which is another map, which is Golden Bay, but this shows the maps in Nelson, the locations in Nelson, Tasman. So in terms of Regional Land Transport Plan and Waka Kotahi, and we have had some conversation with the active transport team in Waka Kotahi on this. In fact, we had a Zoom call yesterday with some of their team and with the new, I think she's called the active transport planner from TDC. So the Waka Kotahi, their active transport people are aware of this as well. So in Tasman, we've particularly identified the Rabbit Island Mapua connection. The ferry at the moment is very much focused around the Great Taste Trail. As you're probably aware, it doesn't operate during the weeks over winter. It doesn't operate early morning or late afternoon. So our suggestion is that actually needs to be considered as part of the regional public transport network. There's increasing population in Mapua Tasman area, which again, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But with e-bikes and growth of e-bikes, it's a very viable option to commute from Mapua or Tasman across to Rabbit Island through to Richmond on an e-bike. Whether that's an improved ferry service or whether that's a bridge, and we know there's been toings and froings over the possibility of a bridge, our position is that it needs to actually be considered as more than just a facility for the Great Taste Trail. Down the bottom of the map, this is number 7 there. That points down to what's called the Heartland Ride from Tapawera. That goes through Tadmore Saddle, comes out on State Highway 6 at Glen Hope, and then turns off again and goes to Lake Rotorua and then through to Murchison. That section from Glen Hope to turn off to Lake Rotorua is on State Highway. It's 100k. I'm pretty sure that's still 100k speed limit. There's a lot of trucks on it, and the shoulder on a lot of that road is really inadequate. It's not a safe section to be riding on. There is the old railway embankment. In fact, goes along below the road, and Bill has had that surveyed, and it's quite feasible to actually put not significantly expensive to put a trail through there. And we have flagged that with Waka Kotahi as something that we think that they should be incorporating into some of their planning. The other one, Motueka Valley East, that's number 8 up here. And that's not, we don't see that as part of the Great Taste Trail, which goes along the West Bank, but there is certainly a lot of community interest in a commuter route from Ngatamoti out to Motueka. And then in the Nelson region, we've got Wakatu Drive, which is number 10 here, which I'll come back to just briefly. The Rocks Road shared off-road cycle and walk path, which is an ongoing discussion, which I probably don't want to get into detail on here. Nelson North, number 13, that's extending the cycle path out to Clifton. And then the Mangatapu, number 12 here. Again, Bill's done a lot of work surveying a route that would make that a much more bike-friendly option. And that really gives the option to someone coming off the ferry in Picton with a bike. There's the Whale Trail being developed, which will take people down to Kaikoura. But what we'd like to see is a much more user-friendly option that uses the link pathway from Picton through to Havelock and then connects through to Pelorus, through the Mangatapu to Nelson, and then people can proceed through to the west coast. I'll just briefly talk about Wakatu Drive, and then I'll hand over if Axel wants to give you any comments on the Golden Bay section, and then hopefully we've left time for any questions or comments. So I did present on the Wakatu Drive cycleway to the Nelson City Council Transport Committee last year. It's a very high use section. Average daily, this is from our counters, average daily around 500 people using that or passes of our counters. You can see it's both for commuter use, those peaks at the beginning and the end of the day, but also very popular from a recreational perspective. So particularly in the weekends, this is the weekend use, those two peaks there. Increasingly, the people on it are on e-bikes. They travel faster. Some of them are less experienced cyclists. It's too close to the highway, and the surface of it is shocking. Sections of it, some sections are great, it's not all, but we have been advised by Waka Kotahi that is in their low-cost, low-risk program for the current NLTP, and that the section from Orphanage Stream south to about the aquatic centre, that section should be completed by June 2024. But that still leaves the section north of Orphanage Creek. There's still a section that is right next to the road there. And what we would hope to be is that the councils will give that some priority in terms of their discussions with Waka Kotahi. So it's not just the trust pushing that and saying that needs to be given priority. The use, proximity to a high use highway, dangers from stuff flying off vehicles, which we do have examples of, and the surface and the width. So that's the perspectives on the Tasman, not including Golden Bay. So whether Axel has some comments, and we have a map here with the Golden Bay sections, which are also in the paper that we've given you. Axel?
Yeah, he's unmuted.
And Koto Katoa, greetings from Golden Bay. I just had to unmute myself. I was unmuted the whole time, and when it came to speaking, I got muted. So thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to talk. What you've got in front of us is a map of the Golden Bay priorities. The priorities as they are on the screen, the numbers do not reflect the priorities. Our highest priority is the Takaka to Collingwood route, which is shown as number 2. That is basically along State Highway 60, and that is the highest priority because it has most of the state highway has no shoulder whatsoever, and it's outright dangerous to be on the road, which is why not many people do this. Therefore, whilst the Golden Bay people are known as being environmentally conscious, hardly anybody bikes because it just isn't safe infrastructure available in this area. So what we want to achieve is something that fits in with the national picture, the overall picture that Gillian has so ably outlined, and we want to see this being done in a way that it also works for the locals, where parents are happy to let their children bike to school. So within that very first corridor, our highest priority is to go over what is known as Birds Hill, because that removes the one really dangerous spot between Takaka and Rangihaeta. Rangihaeta is seen as one of the growth areas for Golden Bay, and it is definitely within cycling distance of Takaka, of the local schools. You don't even need an e-bike for it, but there is no safe route to it. We are working with Waka the slip remediation work, which has just finished, has been modified in its layout so that a cycleway can easily be retrofitted. We just need to work with the local landowner, and then that's sorted. We haven't really talked to the community publicly about it. We have a strategy and have had for a few years, but we haven't asked the community for land. The community is coming to us, offering us land. You know, if there isn't enough room within the road corridor, you can have our land. We have several kilometers along this corridor where we have been given unsolicited land offers. So all we need is some funding to get going on this. And so the second priority would be an extension from Takaka to Pohara, which most of this is done. In the next instance, there is an extension plan to go to Pohara Valley Route, then to extend this out to Tautoranui. And once those three components are done, a water taxi can link to the Good Taste Trail via Kai Territory, and it links to the Heafy track at the other end, and that would basically create a bikepacking connection all the way from Picton, the ferry, to the west coast via the Heafy, via a water taxi, via what's already on the ground, and via what I've just outlined to you, what we see as our priorities. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Axel. So just a final slide, Stuart, which is what we're looking for in the regional land transport plan. So what we'd like to see is a vision for a regional cycle network in the plan, and we've provided it to you there. We'd like to see cycle highways CH6 and CH60, and some annual funding allocation in the plan. And I guess very much where, we want to see the councils engaging with Wakatahi and emphasising that there is some priorities around strengthening our regional cycle network. Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you. Did you want to see if there's any questions? We've got a couple of minutes. Any questions? Okay, Emma.
Get some numbers in there around the costs for those components that you're looking at. What process did you go through to develop those costs?
I could probably answer those. Some of them are based on some quite tight stuff because they compare very well to what we've done before. So what we do is we use the latest contract we have from a contractor to build a section of trail, and we know it's around $50 a metre. And then we know how much our bridges cost, and then we put that in and then put a contingency on it. Some of them are a little bit of guesswork, but again, the contingency is added in. I would point out that a couple of them are 3 or 4 years old now, and we didn't update them deliberately because then when we go to look at it in more detail, we need to revise them, like the section from Havelock to Pelorus. That's only it's about 3 or 4 years old now. And same with the Gowan, we did that 2 years ago, that area. But based really on what we've done before and how we come about it. Yeah.
So
Can I add to this? Our group in Golden Bay is just about to engage a designer to take our high-level feasibility study that we've got and put that through a costing exercise to see whether the cost estimates that we've got so far, whether they are about right or whether they need changing.
The paper that we provided has been provided to the staff of both councils as well. So, I mean, they haven't been intimately involved in preparing it, but we've had conversations with them, and that's obviously an ongoing conversation, and discussion around costings would be part of that ongoing conversation as well.
Bill or Gillian? Question around the prioritisation of the next projects. What information do we have about the count numbers on each of the sections of the Great Taste Trail? And is there any connection with accident data that we get out of ACC? You're off-road, so transport data is not there. So if we're wanting to make prioritisation of areas where we've got the greatest use, and secondly, areas where we do know accidents occurring, for instance, that section along State Highway 6 adjacent to the estuary and Whakatu Drive. So what's the quality of information we have on those two things to help us make prioritisation decisions about the next cycleway projects?
We've got good information on numbers from our counters, which are on various sections of the trail. So numbers of riders, we've got good information on. Accidents on the trail is through reporting to the council website, through to our website. We also have surveys, and the surveys do report where people have incidents on the trail, but it is anecdotal. I mean, I couldn't say that we have comprehensive information on accidents, but we have.
Yeah. Does ACC give you data?
Yeah, I'm just going to say we haven't linked into ACC data, but it would be good to be able to do that because, frankly, probably perhaps only a fifth of the accidents are actually being reported. We certainly get the major accidents reported, but a lot of people have a crash because the trail's too narrow and they just say, well, it was really our fault, and they don't report it to anybody or something like that. It'd be good to get that data, and that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I'm just wondering if you've given thought to, in your vision, to breaking it down a little bit more into so that the benefits for getting to school and work are one thing, and then the economic benefits are another. It just seems to be quite broad, and I'm just thinking forward to the long-term plan, and that more specific benefits more of a breakdown into specific benefits could be helpful. And certainly, as far as Golden Bay goes, the the economic benefits are certainly being looked at by Golden Bay Promotions, because these can be quite considerable. And so the group that probably doesn't fit into either of those categories is the local recreational riders, who probably have more choice about where they go. They're not fixed to a particular destination, as perhaps the tourists and the school and workers are. It's just I'm wondering if you'd given some thought to that.
Yes, most definitely. Probably the example I would bring up is when we started the Great Taste Trail, we thought, what will we do as our first section? And our first section was a high priority section of biking to Ramsau School. That was the first section we did because we saw that, and suddenly the number of kids being able to bike to school increased there. It doubled with it as soon as we finished the trail. the idea of this vision is something to link together to give us some guiding document around what is the overall strategy. But within that, we do definitely look at upgrading sections so that they're catering for what's needed in the particular area. The estuary around from Richmond here is grown in numbers and grown in usage to the extent that it actually really needs an upgrade to a wider path and a better facility. Otherwise, the number of accidents, the number of people will increase in terms of, the usage is dominated, the level trail is not up to what the usage is what I'm trying to say. And that's the sort of thing we're constantly looking at. But it's the overall vision we're putting to this group that we'd like you to look at, because that gives an overall guidance to what you did. Then you'd put priorities on it in terms of what's important for each little area. And we do have that information, but it could take longer than 20 minutes to explain it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Julian, thank you very much for your presentation. Excellent, excellent. I'm wanting to ask you about the Rabbit Island link through to Mapua. Now, it's not an all year round linkage, is it? And you say
it does operate in the weekends all year round and in school holidays, but it doesn't operate weekday during the winter from May through till.
No. So my question really is a couple here. Really, is you mentioned a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
That's one option. Have you another? Sort of...
I think another option. The only other option is to have a good analysis of the ferry options. Really, that ferry has just grown through a private investment initially, seeing an opportunity. The council does subsidise it at the moment. Is that the best operation to be subsidising? Is it the best ferry? Would you be better off with something smaller that could operate more frequently? So I think personally, that needs a good analysis of options, because I don't really think there's any other option other than a bridge or some sort of a ferry connection.
Not the roadway, not the highway.
Well, it would cost you a lot to upgrade that road, so that would be an acceptable option for cycling. And it's also a much more, it's hillier. To go through Rabbit Island, it's a flat ride. It's the shortest ride if you're really wanting to encourage active transport and commuting from Mapua and Tasman. Then through Rabbit Island would be your best choice.
Yes. So the two options are the bridge.
Yep.
And a better, more regular service by ferry.
Yep.
Thank you.
Talk to us today, so thanks very much, Julian and Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And then we'll move on to the next presentation, which is Wakakotari NZTA update. So
Kia ora tātou. I'm obviously working on the weekend because I've got the date wrong, 6th of May, but I'm sure we'll be quite all right. We haven't quite been washed into tomorrow yet, so very pleased to see that the forecast rain hasn't been as heavy here in Nelson as we were worried about so far. So as usual, I'll start off on the update in terms of the national picture, and one of the matters that has been obviously of considerable interest to all of our sector has been the supply of bitumen since the closure of the Marsden Point facility. And so we have reviewed that, and the review has found that the input market is working well, and that there's no indication that there'll be a significant shift in that following Z Energy's exit. And we have obviously quite a lot of technical work there around the pricing and so on that we need to continue to do, and we'll be working with the industry as we go through that. So that's obviously been something that we needed to take a national picture on to ensure that we had that stability of supply for the country. One of the things that we do every year is that we have a focus on road safety, and so Road Safety Week is coming up from the 15th to the 21st of May. This is coordinated by Break, which is a road safety charity, and it's sponsored by ourselves and Becca. And really working to celebrate the people who are our road safety heroes. And that is a whole range of people. So school crossing patrols are one part where people can start right when they're at primary school taking a role in road safety. But road workers, our planners, engineers, emergency services and other transport professionals and road safety workers. And so we've got one activity, I think it's at Victory School here in Nelson, and but we're also encouraging any others to celebrate that, and increasingly looking to think about how we could grow this in future years as well, to celebrate partnerships, for example, the way that police work around schools to improve safety, and trying to ensure that we encourage everyone to celebrate success where we improve a safer road environment. We have now completed the most recent version of Arataki, our 30-year plan. And this is one of the ways that we are really looking to formally extend our horizon, because our land transport system is full of long-term infrastructure that's 50 to 100-year infrastructure. We want our planning horizon to be much more focused on that longer-term horizon. And we know that there will be quite significant change within that time frame, that 30-year time frame. So we want to be keeping an eye on that as we work in our current 3, 6, 10-year planning cycles. So really encourage anyone working in the transport sector to look at that, to consider what that is telling us, but also then to feedback and input to the next version, which is due out in October of next year. So that's another part of our wider infrastructure that we're looking to provide. Another really important step forward in the new speed management role is the deadlines have now been set by the Director of Land Transport for the full speed management plan. So these are the speed management plans that will come into effect from 1 July 2024. And so it says that the 5th of October is the final date for publication of any consultation draft speed management plan, and the 29th of March is the final date for submitting those to the Director of Land Transport for certification. And we have been very clear in our communication with road controlling authorities that if they've been significantly impacted by weather events to the extent that those deadlines are problematic, that they can apply for an exemption, which is what's called a specific date. It's not an exemption to the overall time frame, but it's working with us to have a specific date that suits their needs. But we have talked quite widely with RCAs on that, so we don't expect that to be a major problem. Another one of our key climate change targets is vehicle kilometre travelled reduction, and we are working through what that plan will look like, and we have the focus here is on Tier 1 and 2 councils. However, the initial work is very much towards Tier 1, but Tier 2 councils can absolutely choose to participate earlier if they want to. So the Te Manatum Waka, the Ministry of Transport, will be setting out the sub-national targets in June. And then they'll also be engaging around how that feeds through to the draft government policy statement on land transport. And then December will be the next phase of looking at how that will be implemented with Tier 1 councils. And then December of next year will be the Tier 2 councils. So the government did change this. So originally there was Tier 1 and 2 were proceeding on the same track. And so we are prioritising those Tier 1 cities. So as it says here, we'll continue working with all councils, all Tier 1 and 2 councils. And then we can also then look at the funding associated with that through the RLTP process as we go through the second half of this year. So I think that the recognition here is obviously that the vast majority of that VKD reduction comes in the major urban centres where there are existing strong networks for public transport or for active modes. And so that's where we see the ability to move fastest and to deliver the greatest reduction. But there will be other opportunities in other council regions, and so we certainly don't want to exclude that, but that won't be the first area of focus. So again, that's setting out a bit more detail that we will keep doing it, and there will be support if councils say that they want to do that. And then the programs will follow that as well. And there's funding available. So part of the Climate Emergency Response Fund is to facilitate the shift and the activities needed for VKT reduction.
Shall we just see if there's any questions on that section before we go to the regional update? Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Emma, for this portion of your presentation. What I was going to say excites me, but what I'm very impressed with is the road safety heroes theme. I think that wording says a lot, and the fact that you're shining a light on the very people that spend their volunteer hours or their working hours protecting lives, it says a lot, that theme, road safety heroes. And I'd like to commend you on that, because it's such a difficult task that those people perform. And it's critical, isn't it, when you're losing about one person per day and perhaps 7 serious accidents per day throughout Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I just want to commend you on that. It just moves me, quite frankly, when you think of those words. What is happening at the Victory School? What sort of an event is it that they're having there to celebrate this week?
So the events involve bringing together, what we usually do is we'll bring together one of our roading contractors. So they'll bring some cool kit like attenuated trucks or the vehicles that are used on the roadworks sites. I've participated in events previously, and so we will work with Becca, with the school and with others who participate, and we'll have a program of activities for the kids, which might involve talking to them about aspects of road safety, what they can do. Sometimes we'll bring a truck along, a big truck, so they can learn about blind spots and why, as a a cyclist or as pedestrian that they need to take care around big vehicles. So we'll just focus on things that are really real for the kids, and we'll talk to them about why lower speed limits through roadworks, for example, are about safety, and then they can feel how heavy a road cone is, so they understand that, if someone hits that and it goes into someone, it's dangerous. And we might talk also about seatbelts and keeping safe in cars. So really just an opportunity to work with kids and encourage them to be safe, and also get them a bit excited about the whole transport sector and potential future careers as well.
Thank you. Excellent.
And just two quickies. What's the overall vehicle kilometre transport reduction target by 2035? And my second question is, when the presentation says that Tier 2 councils have the option to opt in, when is that this year?
The VKT target is, I think it's 41% reduction by 2030, or is it 31% reduction? Sorry, I just don't have that right at my fingertips. But it's in that order. I can certainly come back to you on that.
Sorry, it's 31%? Or you're not sure?
I'm just not sure. I
Okay.
can come back to you on that.
And my second question was, it notes that there may be some supplementary funding that's provided to regions that we can apply later this year. I'm interested in when. And I'm happy to explain why I think that's important.
So we don't have a detailed timeline for that, but the key thing is that if you are interested, to signal that to us now, so your officers are working with us, and as those timeframes get locked in, then we can certainly add the funding.
The point I was weighing is, it says funding is available to assist Tier 2 councils with developing these programs with an expression of interest funding process opening later this year. You're not sure when?
No. But the key thing is, if your officers are talking to us, they'll have the hotline on exactly when that will be.
The reason I think the committee needs to know is, when do we need to have a discussion as to whether we're interested in having an expression of interest? If we can get that some signal, so that then if it is soon, that we can get on the timetable and the agenda for the Regional Transport Committee as to when we need to make that call as to whether we are going to make an expression of interest or not. So not concerned, just what the timetable is, because we need to have a discussion, and the question is going to be, what's the right timing for that?
So once we know that date, we can work that into the agenda.
Yeah, and what the guidance I'd like to give to officials is, if it's not till the end of the year, no panic. If it has to be by August, well, we need to have a discussion at one of our regional transport committees as to whether we're going to have a crack.
Sure.
And the target is 41% by 2035. Thank you, Alex.
Oh, thank you.
Anything further?
Yeah, so there are the 4 areas in which that applies. So we've got low emission vehicles in there. We've got the reduction in the light car fleet in urban areas through public transport and other modes, decarbonising freight, and reducing the fuel.
I understand each of those different components. Here's the bit I'm really interested in. What's the date?
Yes.
And what's the proportion of vehicle kilometres? So you've got your shift to electric, you've got your hydrogen, your heavy transport. I'm quite specifically interested in what the targets are around
the
reducing
overall
vehicle
VKT is 20%.
Is a 20% reduction by 2035. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you. Just a question from yourself, Emma, in regards to the speed management plans. And understand most of that, just in relation to the final date for submitting final draft SMPs for certification is the 29th of March 2024. How long is that certification process likely to take, and what does that involve?
So the certification process, I don't know exactly how long it would take. Obviously, they have to come into effect from 1 July, and there's a process. So that doesn't mean it on. So the Director of Land Transport has to go through each of those plans and consider whether they align with the guidance and everything else. So so that we have 60 something road controlling authorities. So they will submit those plans. The director has to consider those. And if they are all in alignment, I think that will be relatively straightforward. If there are any that are in contradiction to the guidance or don't meet some of the requirements, that may take longer, because obviously there's a formal process that the director will have to go through with those. But the March deadline is to allow all of them to be approved by 30th of June.
Right, thank you. Yeah, because now it's been quite a long process getting to this stage, and I'm just hoping that's not going to be another year-long process just for the certification. But
No,
does it sound like
it should, if they're fully aligned, that should be relatively straightforward.
right? Excellent, thank you. Any other questions?
Quick sup on that. So when would they come into effect? So got to consult by 5 October, get a final date for the final plan 29 March. Is it the intention that the new speed limits from the plans would come into effect 1st July? Did I hear that? Or what?
From the 1st of July.
Yeah,
So
from 1st July
there's a
24.
process. So there's quite a lot of infrastructure that goes alongside that. So if speed limits are being changed, in some cases, it may be as simple as changing a sign. But even that, ensuring you've got a procurement process and we had huge challenges last year actually getting the metal for the sign. So it can be a little, you have to make sure that we've got time for that. But there's other factors where for some of those speed changes, there may be associated changes that are needed in terms of how that road environment looks and feels in order to provide the road users with the right signals that they're in a lower speed environment and things like that. So there may be some associated changes that are being done alongside those speed changes. So they may take a bit longer.
Through the chair, just to supplement that, when Emma said from, that's exactly that. So through the speed management plan process itself, the councils and the RTC can actually outline the timing of when those speed reductions and the associated infrastructure occur.
Thank you. For that, I think we can move on to the restaurant thing.
Sure. Okay, starting off on the Nelson side. So we have some ongoing work. We have had a few delays on some parts of our work program, just as we have come through all of the work that was done after last year's weather events, and just had to balance off two major things. One was that our team and the contractors have done an incredible job in getting the overall planned maintenance program back on track, and almost all of that has now been completed. One section left to be done once the weather clears. So we've put a lot of resources into that, and then obviously we also had to manage getting some leave and managing the welfare of people who put in a lot of work over the work needed to recover from last year's rain event. So some of these things have slowed down a bit as a result of that, but planning is still underway for the 3 pedestrian refuge facilities along State Highway 6, Turnanui Drive and Annesbrook Drive, and the raised safety platform across the entrance to Muritai Street. So that's our key connection, so we get people walking and cycling there. And we will be talking to the affected residents and businesses in the areas adjacent to those. We have work underway on the vegetation control in terms of State Highway 6. That's no change from my previous update. And we are also doing some more work on Rocks Road in terms of
Thank you. I think we'll take questions on that slide and maybe as we go through here. And we've got quite a lot of detail in this slide, particularly. Mayor Smith.
I've been quite taken back, Emma, by the frequency of disruption on State Highway 6 and the degree to which it just paralyses the region. And delighted to see item 4 of looking at a response plan. Whether it's been roadworks, which inevitably has to be done at some time, but also when there's an accident, which we had a couple of weeks ago, as well as there are some areas that are vulnerable to storm events. My question is, how does it work between Whakakatahi and Nelson City Council and Tasman around, for instance, use of Kerry Marshall Drive, Alec, through Saxon Field as a emergency only type link? Now, if something's only occurring once in a blue moon, look, I can't expect our planners to do it, but in my view, there would be real merit in having this disruption response plan and the automatic capacity to have signage, speed limits and other things for some other route through. I would hate to add up the millions of dollars of disruption. I've had emails from people whose surgery's been disrupted, concern from accident specialists around it, and it's just occurring so frequently that I'm really keen for us to make some progress on this.
Thank you, Alex. Oh,
So this is something that's in front of our minds, and Richard, myself and Whakakatai are working very, very closely on doing that. Unfortunately, we keep on getting overtaken by other important events, such as weather events. Every time we try and sit down, we get overtaken. But we are cognizant of the fact that this is very, very important, and it will include a whole range of contingency places, for example, using Kerry Marshall and the limits that we set on that. And it is on our to-do list. Absolutely, we realise the need to work together to minimise that disruption.
Can I be so cheeky as to ask a timeline?
Through the chair, you may. I can't give you a timeline other than to say it is on our list. It's not at the top of the list at this moment in time, but probably within the next 3 weeks we could probably try and get together. There is substantial work that has taken place between I know Tasman and Nelson on a granular level, but we just need to formulate that higher view. So probably 3 to 4 weeks.
The bit I'd add is that with social media, the word gets out quickly. And neighbours commented to me that there are, at least in the most recent disruption, 30 four-wheel drive vehicles that went round the bollard and the blockage and managed to find their way across. And so bit of my concern is that if we don't get something organised, I think we're going to get an increasing problem of people finding their own way through, which is not very satisfactory.
And we've noticed that, and we need to address it because that's not safe behaviour. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Start off with the future actually business case regarding your pedestrian refuge. Years ago, we got one put in Motueka, opposite the warehouse there. It was done overnight. They built the thing offsite, carted in, dropped it there with a hired truck, and completed the next day. So the traffic management cost was just about zip, not hundreds of thousands of dollars over 3 or 4 days while you cut one lane out and do it. So just to get someone who knew all about that, they might be able to lead the way to make things a bit quicker and a bit cheaper. Number two is the bit that Nick Smith was just talking about then. A few people from Motueka got caught up in that roadblock at the accident a couple of weeks ago. They said it'd be really handy if there was some way that the emergency services could open up the rope fence so that people could actually turn around and go back and then try and get in the flow, because some of them just sat there for quite a few hours because they couldn't go forwards, back, sideways or anything. If that's a consideration at some time, that would be a great thing.
Yes, we generally do have the ability to drop the median barriers. So if that didn't happen, I can certainly check in with that, because that is something, it was a particularly complex situation they were faced with. So, but we can certainly look at that, because they are designed to be able to be dropped.
Truckies know they're stuck. It's just the carpet.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Emma, there's a growing feeling in the community that Rocks Road, well, Haven Road, yes, I suppose, Haven Road, Wakefield Quay, Rocks Road, Tinnery Drive, for walking and cycling isn't the pleasant experience it once was. There's a wide body of opinion there supporting that statement. And I want to know, I see in here, what triggers a interim speed management plan, because you made mention of one here, because I would like to advocate that we have one for Tinnery Drive and Rocks Road, if we could, right through to the Haven State Highway 6 roundabout. Are you of a mind to consider that?
So under the new rule, we can apply an interim speed management plan, but the government has directed us to focus only on the top 1% of most dangerous corridors, and Rocks Road is not one of those. So it won't be in the short-term focus for us, but it is certainly one of the corridors that has been identified with the potential for decrease in speed to 30 kilometres an hour. And so it is certainly an option for the future, but not in the interim speed management plan.
Could I just ask a supplementary? That future, what time frame would you put on that? Tomorrow, next week, or the week after, or next month? Or
I don't think it'll be any of them. I think you probably need to go a little longer.
Yeah, so it can't be in the interim speed management plan, which is for application in the current NLTP period. So it certainly can be considered for the speed management plan that would come into effect from 1 July of next year.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill Stevens.
Thanks, Stuart. Just in terms of the State Highway 6 Rocks Road study, I'm really glad to see that there. Just curious in terms of how we're going to be linking in with the local community there, particularly in terms of they had reports around issues for mobility scooter users, and just we already know it's a narrow corridor for walkers that often gets narrower with these works. So how are we going to be talking to those directly affected?
So that is part of the focus group work. So I don't know exactly who they've identified for those focus groups, but we have had contact from walkers, cyclists, mobility scooter users. So I can double check, but I'm sure all of those will be part of those focus groups.
Thanks, Emma. So Tasman, so here we have a key thing that we're working on at the moment is the Hope Bypass designation, because we do need to extend that by August, or lodge the intent to extend that by August 2023. So that's the first priority for us, because we obviously don't want to lose the ability to use that existing corridor. And secondly, we are also working closely with the council to ensure that as the Richmond area develops, that there is that focus on intensification to support the intent of the program business case. So they're really key components for us, because obviously the more we can connect people together to those key transport corridors, the better the system will work. In terms of the interim speed management plan, we are considering the feedback from that consultation from last year, and we'll have an update, and that will take into account the direction from the government that was recently made. Ruby Bay Bypass medium barrier, we have secured funding for that, so we now have design work underway for that, which is a significant safety improvement. And we've got investigation underway for installation on sections of State Highway 60 between Redwood Road and Mapua Drive. Those sections, obviously, we have to look quite closely at the different access points along there, because the bypass doesn't have very many access points, but those other sections do. So we just need to work very carefully through that and make sure that there is still good access for people. And we have the shoulder widening work between Parapara and Collingwood on the northbound side of State Highway 60 that has been completed. And finally, the ATP line marking, we have the machine in town. So we've been getting that on the edge line between Kahatu to Murchison. And that ATP is a really important part of our safety toolkit, because it alerts drivers if they do become distracted or drowsy and start to stray from their lane. It's a very, very effective way of alerting people and reducing the risk of crashes. Any questions on that before we charge on?
Thank you. It'd be good to see the fence go up on the motorbike passing lane on the Ruby Bay bypass. At the moment, you've got the two main vehicles, and it cost me a windscreen when I was passing a truck and trailer, and a motorbike shot down where the fence is going to go and sprayed it with a shingle. There was about 3 motorbikes that I managed to pull back in before the other 2 went past. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that going up. Hopefully that will also allow that piece of road to stay at 100 kilometres an hour. Would be appreciated if it could. Just a question about the funding. Like when we did the Richmond program business case, there were talk about the 10-year plan of different things, and there was a case of money being spent from Richmond through to Motueka of about 89 million. Will that fence money come out of that, or will that be funded separately? Just don't have to answer me now. Just asking the question, that's all, because I remember that there was an $89 million fee figure that was done. Planning has to be done, but yeah, I just wonder whether that'll be reduced out of that, or will it?
In terms of the bypass barrier,
Yeah.
that's being funded out of the Road to Zero activity class. So it's a specific safety project.
Richard,
Just wondering on the Ruby Bay bypass, Redwood Road is actually in Appleby and goes to Mapua Drive, but the Ruby Bay bypass starts in Mapua Drive and goes across the top of the hill round to Harley. I wonder which section you're referring to. Is it Redwood Road, or it goes right through to Aporo Road?
I'd have to look at a map just to, I mean, we can certainly talk to you about it.
Okay. Yeah, okay, because if it's Redwood Road to Mapua Road, that's the bit that's 80 k's at the moment. But that's not the Ruby Valley bypass. So I'm just wondering whether.
No, it's separate to the Ruby Bay bypass. Yes.
It is separate. Oh, right.
So
Okay.
it is
that section?
that section on the
Okay.
side. Yeah.
Right.
just a question from myself in regard to the ATP edge line. That includes the centre line, doesn't it? Because I'm taking that's code for a rumble strip.
Yes, audio tactile pavement. It is a rumble strip, and it won't always be centre line as well. So the first priority here is putting it on those edges.
Right, but I did notice last time I went to mention there seemed to be more in the centre as well.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a good initiative through that section, I think. So well done, thank you.
Yeah.
No other questions. We can move on to the next slide.
So yes, this is a bit of an update on our summer program. As I mentioned earlier, the team has worked so hard because there was, with all the work and essentially every able-bodied person thrown onto State Highway 6 Whangamai's work, we were well set back on our summer works program, but they have absolutely pulled out everything to complete the work. So we had our biggest ever renewals program, and it has been delivered. So that's a fantastic outcome. And also the drainage renewals, which are such an important part of the resilient network, as the mention there of the ATP. And also when we had our Taka Hill full closure, we did that surfacing program, but also looked at slumping repairs that we had on sections following the August flood, and the guardrail barrier upgrades and maintenance, because they still do their job and get a fair bit of wear and tear.
Thank you. Just a question from myself in relation to that. So certainly it was quite an aggressive program of chip sealing across the district, and quite a bit on State Highway 6 particularly south of Wakefield. And the contractor was very diligent, other than at times they did have long wait times for the traffic. And similar to what Mayor Smith said earlier, people were missing appointments, and because the wait times were up to 40 minutes, where normally one accepts the traffic may be stopped in those sort of situations for 5 to 10 minutes, certainly not 40. And it wasn't just the one-off, it was a number of occasions that people were actually planning their trips that they would be delayed for 30 minutes. And I didn't think that was entirely acceptable under.
Yeah, I can look into that, because 40 minutes is certainly outside what our normal expectations would be on delays in a normal cycle of activity. So unless it was something a bit out of kilter, that certainly shouldn't have been that long.
Would appreciate if you could look back into that and perhaps get back to us. I understand it may have been an issue between the contractor and the traffic management, but I'll leave it for you to investigate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any more slides? No.
No, that's us.
Oh, did you want to cover off Monday?
Yes, so just to update the committee on Monday, we had our regular catch up between some of our board members, our board chair and board members, and some of the mayors. And it's a really good opportunity to make the connection to ensure that our board is getting direct insights from the mayors, and also for board to provide information and discuss issues directly with the mayors. So they've agreed that they certainly would maintain the 6 monthly cycle of meetings, and Local Government New Zealand facilitates those, and that they definitely saw the value around sharing information, both about the constraints and opportunities that local government faces currently, as well as the changing situation facing waka kotahi, both in terms of funding and priorities. So we also talked about the GPS signals and the challenges that the delays to the GPS provide, but that we will just keep working together on that. And also just looked at a range of issues around the importance of maintaining the existing asset base, as well as looking at opportunities for investment. And we also talked about the impact and the challenges that we're seeing across the country in terms of the weather events and what that means for adaptation in response to these changes, and both the fiscal challenge in terms of the scale of those events, but then also how we respond, and whether I think in all the time I've been involved in for probably many years previously, there's always been an assumption that we're continuously working to improve, upgrade our network right across the country, both local road and state highways. And I think what we're seeing now in the scale of these events, that while we've still got a very high priority focused on maintaining access for people, it may not always be at the same or improved level of service, simply because of the scale, the cost and the frequency of events. So that was a good discussion for us to have, to see the impact that it's having. And we had the Mayor of Gisborne there, and obviously Tairāwhiti has been very significantly impacted, and it was important. Our chair also comes from Gisborne, so he'd seen that firsthand himself. And I think that underscored also the challenges of these major events when you lose power, fibre, water. It's actually very, very challenging for communities and individuals. And it's a good reminder that we should be all prepared for situations where we may face a lack of access to all of the things we take for granted, because these don't work without power and fibre and transmission towers, and none of those things were available. And also just talking about how the shared interest we all have in having a really strong contractor environment, and that we have, that we are building and retaining great people to work on the system for us across the country. That's it. Anything else you would add?
Yeah, well, thank you, Emma. So why I asked Emma to give the update is that Mayor Tim was unable to attend, so I attended in his place, and there was two other mayors, the Mayor of Rangatahi and the Mayor of New Plymouth, and Sam Broughton from Selwyn couldn't attend because his flight was cancelled on the day. So it was really good to get around the table with these NZ waka kotahi people, and we got a good understanding of some of their issues as well. And we, as Emma said, hopefully they got an understanding of some of our issues. So it was a really full and frank discussion. And so, yeah, it was very beneficial. As Emma said, there was the board chair and Tracy Martin, the former MP, on the board there, and Emma and her colleague Lisa, and some other, and the chief executive, Nicole Rosie. So Nicole had quite a lot to say on some things. And so, yeah, it was a really good discussion and well worthwhile the effort to go. So hopefully we can use that in the future, but just developing those relationships. So yeah, I really did appreciate that opportunity, and yeah, it just give us a better insight into how NZTA work and see us as well. So, and that they committed to doing it to a broader, because I'm not sure how it came about that Tim was even invited. I think it might have been regional sector or something like that, but to open it up to a wider cross sections of mayors on a more regular basis, something like 6 monthly. I think this was the first liaison since the election. Was that the case, Emma?
Yes, we had a previous meeting prior to the local government elections.
Yeah. And of course, with the change in the number of mayors, I think next time you're going to open up to a wider group. But they did say, well, that could be 3 to 6 months' time as people find their feet and things like that. So no, all good. So I guess we need someone to move that we receive that update. Councillor O'Neill-Stevens moved, seconded Councillor Dowler. All those in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Against, the resolution is carried. And then I think the next item is the transport planning update. Mark, is that you? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's the public transport update in particular. Transport planning. How long have you got? So it's the public transport update. So thank you for the opportunity to provide you with this report. And today I will take the report as read, but I do have one specific update to alert you to, and that is point 3.6 on page 22 does refer to bus stop locations. And it refers to one that we were considering near the Cawthron steps. I would like to update you that since this report was authored, officers have reconsidered that location, and we're now proposing an alternative site that will be less disruptive to businesses and will require less car parks. So the targeted engagement for that site will go ahead as part of our normal process and will be taken to the Nelson City Council hearings panel in due course. So I didn't want to be alarmist, but what is in there is no longer current. We have considered moving that site further west down Selwyn Place towards Rutherford Street. Yes, Cawthron steps, church steps. Cathedral steps. I think the correct name is the Cawthron steps. Yeah. Yes. We all know where I'm talking about. Okay. So there are no other changes to the report as it was authored. The good news headline in this report is really our patronage data, which is shown in 2.1. And Drew has done a bit more drilling down on that if you have specific questions at the end of it. But essentially our patronage, unlike most other places in the country, has returned to pre-COVID levels. So that is significant. We're well out of that hole. It'll be interesting to see what happens when half price fares come off at the end of June. But of course, we are introducing a new fare structure on the 1st of August, which will be as good as half price fares. The decision we seek from you today is in regard to the name of the new service. So you will recall when we brought a report up last time, you wanted a little bit more detail on that, which we've provided, and the branding and communications is well covered in section 3.8, but we are seeking the committee's approval for the new name for the service, which is eBus. And finally, at the conclusion of this brief report, if we have time, I'd like to show just a 2.5-minute YouTube clip, which shows our new buses, they're actually our buses, in the factory in China and being loaded onto a bus, onto a boat, it's a very big bus. There are 17 bright blue buses in this clip, and they are our buses and they are on our way here. We're very confident they'll be here in time.
Video, so there'll be no questions, but I do have one. Just in relation to your report and the locations, Mark, Nelson Airport, have got some finalisation around siting and cost funding?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. We have a location, we have detailed designs that have been signed off by both the Nelson Airport Authority and at our end, and the contractors due to start there shortly. The shelter and seat are very closely located near the terminal, and it's all go. Anything to add to that, Drew?
I mean, agreed with what Mark has said. There is some disruption that will have to happen because we do need to change some of the platforms within the airport to allow the buses to be able to get over it. But we're working with Nelson Airport on that alone to come up with that alternate way of getting around that.
Right, and just further in regards to the Wakefield bus stops, they're work in progress as well.
We don't appear to have anybody from the operations team.
Oh, Jamie's here.
Yeah, there.
Yeah, the Tasman bus stops are all a work in progress. We're just closing out the consultation with affected property owners at the moment, and we'll be in a position to hopefully complete those bus stops very shortly.
Excellent, thank you, Jamie.
Just a couple of comments. Firstly, that bus data is a very good outcome. It is barely a week that has gone by that in some part of New Zealand there has not been a disruption of public transport services, including this week in Auckland. And it is a real compliment to both the council, but also more particularly our contractor, and how well they've managed their staffing, that we have not had disruptions in this area. I was looking and did a search, and I think we are the only region that has not had substantive disruption to our bus services. So a plus there. The second is with respect to the work that's gone into the e-bus brand. Can I just indicate, again, very strong support. I think there's a fair point from Tasman that to have a combined bus service that was continued to be named N-Bus was not consistent with the partnership, and we needed a new change. I'm one of those that says if you are going to have a branded name, it needs to be as short as possible. I think the e-bus both reflects the excitement of an all-electric fleet, and secondly, that there is an environmental benefit of both not just the electric, but also using buses. And so delighted with that, and happy to move the recommendation in respect of the branding of the e-bus. We've got a big collective job, and I note the marketing plan to ensure that we communicate with the public as we approach the 1st of August for the new service. And the more we can get Nelson excited about the potential of the new service, the better, and the branding will be part of that. So happy to move the recommendation on the new e-bus brand.
Right, and receiving the report.
And receiving the report.
Thank you. Do we have a second to that? Councillor Dowler. Any further questions or comments? Oh, thank you, John. Any further questions or comments on that report? I'll put the resolution. I'm just wondering about the video. I don't think it's part of the report, is it, Mark? So all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. I think we should have a bit
What date? Now you've got out really interesting. What date did the buses go on the ship, do you know? Sorry.
Well, we were tracking the ship, but they've changed ships. So I don't know what time they left Shanghai. I don't know exactly, but we spoke to the operator yesterday who placed the order. They're really confident they're going to be arriving in New Zealand within our timeframe.
Yeah, just through the chair. So all 19 buses are on that.
17.
17, sorry.
I know that was really good. So I think we're at where we're at. Move into committee. And we also need a procedural motion to that Kerry Anderson and Michael Fitzpatrick of DLA Piper will be here for the confidential item. So we need to resolve for them to stay. So can we have someone move that? Councillor O'Neill Stevens, seconded by Councillor Dowler. All those in favour will say aye. Against, the resolution is carried. So we are now in committee. Alex? Oh, no, okay, you've got Zoom thing. Yeah, and thank you, Matt.
No, we've got
Oh, right. And that we move into committee. Someone would like to move that? Mayor Smith, do we have a seconder? Councillor Dowler, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Carried. So probably did that the wrong way round.